Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. We have some breaking news. Another amazing bantamweight matchup is being reported as close to being finalized by the UFC for UFC 278 in August, and it is Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvili. And this video is going to be a reaction and an early prediction. And also, I think the announcement of this fight, or the reporting of this fight in the works, unveils a massive bantamweight fight that I've seen absolutely nobody talking about. I'm going to get to that towards the end of the video. And also at the end of the video, I'm going to give you an early prediction for this Merab versus Aldo matchup. But guys, do me a favor, if you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to like the video. And also, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss these types of videos. So first off, I have my complaints about the bantamweight title picture and all the matchups. And, we just recently found out that Aljamain Sterling will be defending his bantamweight title against TJ Dillashaw in September at UFC 279. Not 100% official yet, but the UFC is working on that. Aljamain Sterling is saying he hasn't signed the contract yet. And I wasn't a big fan of getting TJ Dillashaw a bantamweight title shot off of a debatable win off of Corey Sandhagen, and then before that, a 2-year suspension from using EPL. But at the end of the day, the bantamweight division is so stacked and so good that really you can pick names out of a hat, and any of these fights are going to be amazing. And even though maybe this wouldn't have been my first choice, Aldo versus Merab, this is an amazing matchup. You have Merab, who's just looked nasty in this last fight against Marlon Moraes, which I know isn't the greatest win. Marlon Moraes, has had his issues, but I think Marlon was more of an issue of the chin and not his skills. I still think Marlon Moraes was an elite level bantamweight. Yes, I know that sounds crazy. The skills were there. The chin was not. The body was failing him. And I know that Merab almost got stopped in that fight, but he was able to work through it, come back, get a massive win over Marlon, who has a win over Jose Aldo, and at one point in time was fighting for the bantamweight title just 2 years ago. It's crazy how fast the game can change. But this is an amazing fight, and this is the first really huge test for Merab Dvalishvili against Jose Aldo, former featherweight champion, featherweight GOAT. Alexander Volkanovski starting to make a challenge for that now. If he beats Max Holloway for a third time, he probably takes it just from career longevity, strength of schedule, stuff like that. But everybody doubted Jose Aldo when he went down to bantamweight. I know he has a loss to Marlon, but that was a split decision, and a lot of people thought he won that fight. And again, Marlon was one of the scariest 135-pounders for a long time. He has the loss to Petr Yan. That doesn't look bad. Most recently, he's on a 3-fight win streak. He beat Marlon Vera, Pedro Munoz, and most recently, Rob Font back in December. And I know Rob Font just recently lost again, but still, Jose Aldo has looked very, very good at bantamweight. And I'm curious how a guy like Merab is able to deal with a guy like Jose Aldo, who has elite level striking. And on top of that, Jose Aldo is one of the toughest fighters ever to take down. He has an amazing takedown defense. And Merab, I know his game plan coming into this fight. It's going to be to push Aldo against the cage, take him down, grapple him, wear on him, wear out his stamina, and hopefully win a decision, or maybe get Aldo so tired that, he's able to finish him. But I really, that's going to be tough to do. Jose Aldo is still the elite of the elite and has looked so good at bantamweight, and his striking is still elite level. He looks very good. The Petr Yan fight, everyone remembers the ending, but early on in that fight, it was very competitive. And if Merab can get by Jose Aldo, he can have a claim to a potential title shot. I know that sounds crazy, but you look at the rankings, Jose Aldo is currently ranked number 3. Depending on how the division plays out, it would be a massive win for him. And one thing I do like about Jose Aldo in this matchup, and, some managers don't do this when, there could be multiple ways that this could be looked at as an advantage, whether it be 5 rounds or 3 rounds. Jose Aldo, I've always said, if he had like Colby Covington type cardio, Jose Aldo would be impossible to beat, or almost impossible to beat. And this is a 3-round fight on a pay-per-view rather than a 5-round fight on a main event of a fight night card, which I believe is an amazing decision for Jose Aldo, for his management team, to ask for this to be a 3-round fight. Or, I mean, maybe it's just luck. The UFC, this is just what they offered. But if I was Jose Aldo, you know, he has to know his weaknesses. And, you know, also I think it's a little bit overblown because the guy goes 5 hard rounds with Chad Mendes. He's gone 5 hard rounds before. And in the Rob Font fight was 5 hard rounds. He did very well, won the 5th round as well there. But I think Jose Aldo, a 3-round Jose Aldo, is a mythical creature at this point. I mean, he's able to just be super explosive early. He doesn't have to worry about going those extra 10 minutes. And, you know, not enough fighters or fighters teams do this. I said it for a while, and I know this just didn't necessarily matter. Tony Ferguson, what was his manager doing accepting a 3-round fight against Michael Chandler? Tony Ferguson's biggest advantage is his stamina, should only be getting him 5-round fights. So I'm happy to see this with the Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvili fight. And I really think it comes down to, can Merab take him down? Can Merab tire him out? I don't think you're tiring Jose Aldo out in a 3-round fight. And I think Jose Aldo, unless he's fallen off a cliff, which I don't believe he has, I think Merab will not be able to get him down. So my early prediction for this fight, I see Jose Aldo getting a 1st or 2nd round TKO in this fight. I'm biased towards Jose Aldo, but I just believe his striking is still very elite. His speed has not even slowed down. His chin has looked very good at 135 pounds. And now he arguably has a size advantage on some of these guys. I know Merab's kind of a big bantamweight, but now Jose Aldo, you know, wasn't that big at 145. Now he's towards the bigger of the 135ers. He's not going to get out-muscled. I don't believe he's going to get out-muscled unless he was to get exhausted, and that's not going to happen in a 3-round fight. And if you compare Merab versus Jose Aldo striking, it's night and day. Jose Aldo has such a variety of attacks. He has great head movement, great feints, great leg kicks, which he doesn't use enough. He has solid power, and his chin does not look diminished with the weight cut. A lot of people say, oh, Jose Aldo is going to look terrible at 135. The chin's going to disappear. It's not going to be there. He has looked great. He's taken some big shots, you know, while he's been at 135. And honestly, I can't wait to see him against Merab because I believe this is a good matchup for him, especially at 3 rounds. Again, I know I've mentioned that a million times. It is a very good matchup. It's a winnable matchup for Jose Aldo. And I really want to see Jose Aldo have an opportunity to challenge for that 135-pound belt again. You know, he had the shot against Petr Yan. Unfortunately, he lost. I was hoping they were going to make the Sterling-Aldo fight just because, you know, Aldo arguably has a case with a 3-fight win streak. He's a legend in the sport. And I thought that he could beat Aljamain Sterling, and I would have loved to seen him become double champion. Well, not simultaneous double champion, but you get my point. Double champion, former 145-pound champ, and now new 135-pound champ. But, you know, the division's kind of a little bit log-jammed right now. We're going to get to that in a second. But, you know, if he wins this fight off of Merab, over Merab, I think he's got just as big of a claim to the title shot next as anybody else. So if you look at the division right now, and I kind of went over this in the TJ Dillashaw Aljamain Sterling video that I put out yesterday. I'll link that down in the description. I give my early prediction for that fight as well if you want to check that out. But you look at the division, you have Aljamain Sterling as champion. He's fighting TJ Dillashaw, who's ranked number 2. You have Petr Yan, he's kind of up in the air. You have Aldo, who's sitting at number 3, who's fighting number 6, Merab. You have Sandhagen, which it was announced today also, that apparently the UFC is working on a bantamweight fight between Corey Sandhagen and Song Yudong, which is another incredible matchup. Then you have Marlon Vera sitting at number 5. He's fighting number 8, Dominic Cruz. And then you have number 7, Rob Font, who just recently lost. Really not in this conversation at this point. So out of all these fights, and these are all great matchups, again, you could pick names out of a hat to match make 135 pounds. Who is the odd man out right now? And that is Petr Yan, former champion Petr Yan, after the whole debacle with the DQ and then losing a close decision to Aljamain Sterling. Well, who's he going to fight? Because a lot of people want to see Petr Yan fight. You know, he's an elite level fighter. There was talk of the Marlon Vera fight. Why hasn't the UFC matched him up? He said he wants to fight in, like, I think it was October or September. He wants to fight. So who's he going to fight now? Because all the top guys are matched up. He's not going to fight Rob Font. I mean, I highly doubt that. Pedro Munoz, who would be next, is number 10, is fighting Sean O'Malley. What are they going to wait to see if Pedro Munoz or Sean O'Malley beats Pedro Munoz at UFC 276, and then they're going to match Petr Yan up with Sean O'Malley? I have a hard time believing, even if Sean O'Malley starches Pedro Munoz, that they're going to match him up with Petr Yan. That would be a nightmare matchup for Sean O'Malley, and I don't think the UFC would be willing to do that. Here's what I think they are going to do, and this would be a massive fight, and I would love to see this fight. I think the UFC is planning to book Petr Yan versus Henry Cejudo later this year. Cejudo can't return till later this year anyway because he has to be in the USADA testing pool for a certain period of time. And he's the only guy left that would be towards the top. I know he's not ranked right now, but he relinquished the belt. He had the negotiating issues with the UFC, relinquished the belt, pretended he was retired, and he wanted to come back to a 145-pound title shot. That's not going to happen. And I truly believe the UFC and Dana White specifically did not like the way Henry Cejudo handled the relinquishment of the belt, the negotiations, and that's why I did not think Henry Cejudo was going to walk back into a title shot, even though he has more of a claim to a title shot right now than I think TJ Dillashaw does. I don't think the UFC is willing to do that. So they're going to say, you know what? We've seen the UFC have a history of this vindictive matchmaking. And again, this fight makes more sense, so it's not as much vindictive matchmaking. I mean, every fight at 135 pounds is just hard because there's so much elite level talent in the division. But I think the UFC is going to say, okay, Henry Cejudo, you want a title shot? Go ahead, you got to go through former champion Petr Yan. And Petr Yan's going to want to get back to a title himself. He's definitely going to take a fight against Henry Cejudo. And that is a big fight for the division. I would love to see that matchup. And I think that's a fight that nobody's talking about right now because a lot of people aren't thinking about that because Cejudo keeps talking about Sterling. Cejudo keeps talking about Alexander Volkanovski. I believe we will get Petr Yan versus Henry Cejudo later this year. It might be the #1 contender fight. They might fight the winner of Aljamain Sterling, the winner at UFC 279 in September. There's a lot of moving pieces in the bantamweight division just because there's so much elite level talent in the division. But I think that's the fight we're going to get. And if I had to give you an early prediction for that, that is a tough fight because originally I would have said Petr Yan for sure. I just think he's so well-rounded, such a high fight IQ, amazing striking, good takedown defense, good grappling. But, the lack of ability to get out of the positions against Aljamain Sterling once Aljamain Sterling got his back kind of, leaves me up to just think there's a slight hole in that game where maybe an elite level wrestler like Henry Cejudo can take him down, hold him to the ground, and beat him that way. But I don't think that's going to happen. Once this fight were to be announced and I would dig deeper into it, I would give you more of an official breakdown and prediction as always. But right now, I say Petr Yan stuffs the takedowns, or at least does enough defensive wrestling that he has enough time on the feet to win some rounds. And I'll go Petr Yan by decision in this fight. I think it's an amazing matchup, and I think the winner of that fight would definitely deserve a bantamweight title shot next, depending on the timeline of the champion. I mean, again, this is far into the future, but I think the UFC will make that matchup. And the bantamweight division is just on fire right now. Sterling versus Dillashaw, Petr Yan versus Henry Cejudo, Aldo versus Merab, Sanhagen versus Song Yadong. Love that matchup. Marlon Vera, Dominic Cruz, Pedro Munoz, Sean O'Malley, Jack Shore, Ricky Simon. I mean, great fights within the division. Let me know what you guys think of all this down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.